Okay, you've installed Vassal. Now we're going to learn how to use Vassal with Victory in the Pacific. To begin, we're just going to double click the icon, or you could use your startup menu or taskbar if you've added the icon to that. That'll open up the module window where we put Victory in the Pacific when we installed. We'll double click that to begin Victory in the Pacific. Now, Victory in the Pacific will always start with this startup wizard. If you like that, that's great. You can walk through that to load the game, look for a game that's been stored in a file, start a new game, or to look for a game online. If you don't want that, let me show you how to get rid of that. First, uncheck the Show Wizard at Startup. Then I'm going to hit Cancel. Then under the File menu, I'm going to go to Preferences and verify that the Show Wizard at Startup is unchecked. I'm also going to get rid of the prompt for log file comments because I prefer to just tell my opponent in email what the file is for. All right, now I'm going to exit from that window. And back in this window, I also have to, the module window, go to the preferences, and it has a show wizard at startup as well, which I will also uncheck. That will force a startup wizard from every module you have, and so I don't want that. So now I'll double click Victory in the Pacific to begin again. Now we just go straight to the Vassal window. I'm going to, from the file menu, I pick a scenario, and I will just pick the standard 8-turn game, and it will create that file. So that's a simple way to create a new game. All right, over here where the magnifying glass shows, you can increase or decrease the map size. I'm going to increase the map size so that it uses a more effective portion of my screen. You can set yours to whatever works for you. I will also shrink this text area so I can see more of the map. Unfortunately, you have to do that every time you go in. Vassal doesn't remember. I have put in a request to change that. So you have standard scroll bars to use. All right, so how do we move some pieces? It's pretty easy. I can click on a piece to select it. I can drag that piece to where I want it to be. I can click on a stack and then drag that to where I'd like it to go. So I will drag a variety of stacks around. Now, if I want to look at a stack and see what's in it, I can put my mouse on top of the stack. Vassal shows me a little pop-up showing a full-size version of the counter with all of the information on it, so I can see all of those cruisers. Now that's more important when you're looking at a stack of carriers that all have different stats. If I want to get to those ships, I can double-click a stack that will give me this exploded view, and then I can grab out the third cruiser from the bottom, and I can get the second one from the top, and I can take 3 out of there and build a new stack. Just drop a piece right on top of another one to build a stack. When you're done, you can double click, and that will put the stack, collapse the stack into the smaller view. Now I can move this smaller stack of cruisers out to another area. So that's how you can manage your stacks. Another way to work with groups of pieces is to select a group by drawing a bounding box around them. Click and then drag your mouse around multiple groups of units, and then you can take an action with them. So I will move both of those out to the Japanese islands. Another useful thing for that is I'm going to select all the remaining groups, and I am going to flip them over by right clicking and selecting the flip menu. You notice that that's can be activated with the Control F feature as well. So if I hit Control F now, it'll flip them back. Hit it again, it'll flip them over. So that's an easy way to manage large groups of pieces. Now, let me separate off a battleship here, and we'll send them towards the Aleutian Islands. Now, if I right click on that unit or any other unit, I get a menu of options that apply to that unit. Now, some of them are just easy commands to transfer that ship to a location on the board. In this case, I will pick one of them. I'll send him to the graveyard. So I pick graveyard. Now, if I want to see them, I actually click on the sunk icon up in the top command bar, and that'll bring up the graveyard, and there we see Yamashiro is in the graveyard. Now, I don't actually want him there, so I can just drag him right back out and put him on the board. I'll close the graveyard. All right, so we have some other options. I can create a movement trail if I'm going to move the piece from point to point to point. That would be for trying to explain something more clearly to an opponent. All right, I can place a sunk marker or a disabled marker. Notice I can do those with Control S or Control D. I can also place a damage marker, 1 through 9. I can also hit Control 1 through Control 9 to do the same. So let's put out 4 damage, for example. There we go, 4 damage on Yamashiro. Okay, one thing nice about that is you'll see that Yamashiro's damage marker has its name on it. So if it ever gets separated somehow, they're stacked together right now, but if it ever gets separated, then we'd be able to put them together. Now, if I right click again, I'll see the menu for the top piece. So I can increase the damage, decrease the damage, or delete that damage counter. And you notice I don't see the Yamashiro's menu. If I want to see that, I can double click, then left click on the Yamashiro itself. Now I see her menu. And you'll see that last option on there is to flip the unit to Raider side. I'll go ahead and do that. Again, you can Control F to flip pieces as well. Now you don't see the damage marker anymore, but it's still there. If I unselect it, it'll go back into its stack in the proper order, and I will collapse the stack at this point as well. So that's a simple summary. Different pieces have different menus. So if I look at an LBA, you'll see the damage returning to base. If I select that, it will move it to where it thinks the Japanese LBA base. US LBA go to Australia. The Japanese ones go right here on the mainland. Or I can click sunk, of course. I can return it to the return boxes. It'll put it in the turn 9 return box and wait for me to, I'll have to manually put it in the correct one later, but that can be a convenient way to get them all there to start with. But you'll notice there's no disable option if you can't disable LBA. So each piece has its own options. For example, the I-boat has moved to Japan. It also has a removal button, but it doesn't have damage markers or disable or anything like that. So each piece is customized to what it can do. That's how to move the pieces around. You'll notice if I go down here to the repulse and select it, that, yeah, I've got the standard sunk, disable, damage, and flip options. I also have a removal option. I have the graveyard option, but I have different ports than the Japanese pieces had because, of course, it's expected which ports it's expected I would be using are different. All right, so let's look at some of the other options. One of the most important that you'll need is the um, the the hide markers and show hide markers window, which is this item with a 2 on top. Click on it to show that window. I'm going to expand it a little bit so that it's more easy to see. The first tab, the control tab, has port control markers, the island markers, and the flags for the sea areas. So you can drag a flag out of there to the North Pacific to indicate Allied control. All right, the info tab has much more valuable pieces. The first one is the attack order, especially useful in play by email. It lets the Japanese player designate that the Marshalls is going to be the first area of combat. The Central Pacific will be number 2. Notice I used the Control W key to increase its value. So then we can say the Japanese islands is number 3. So I'm going to hit Control W twice to increase that twice to number 3. Again, you can get to that menu by right-clicking and picking increase as well. All right, next we have, you can pick a damage marker from here. I don't like doing that as much because those aren't named for the unit that is damaged. You can pick a marker to show whether it's day or night in an area. I like to set these out as the Japanese to show what my preferences are in an area. I'm going to increase that one, and if you hit Control W, which I'll do a few times, it will cycle through the options, night, day, and day followed by night. So I'm indicating my preference. There is an option up here under the info markers to pick a marker that's specific for the Japanese wanting day and another one for the US, say, preferring night. So I'll flip that over to the night side. I don't typically use those. I just typically put out the final marker, and then when the side that's rolling to determine them actually rolls, change it to whatever it actually is. So I just let the first person declaring put them out, and then the second person adjust them to what actually happens. But that's up to you. Some other options that are in here, you can get a disabled marker. I don't typically do that since I just hit Control D on a piece. You can get copies of the POC markers. They're just here on the POC track, and you can drag them to show that the Japanese scored 7 points. But they don't have any other functionality. The repair marker is a nice way to indicate that a ship spent time repairing. We'll put the Yamato back in port since it's got 4 damage. Flip it over, and I'll delete the damage mark. Oh, I disabled. I will select delete here, and you'll note that this will delete both of the markers because I have the whole stack showing. Now, something to be aware of, if you have a stack, all the markers are deleted. A stack that's selected, whatever function you pick applies to the entire stack. So generally you want to place markers 1 ship at a time. I can pick the sunk marker from here. I can pick the bid marker from here. You'll notice 1 starts on the map already. I can flip that to show which side received the bid. I can set a label there. I like to show that it was a bid of 6, and we were using the mensal options with 3C. That way, all the data about the game is recorded all at once. Other things that are in here, there's a marker for ignoring damage. Let's suppose that, Prince of Wales took 5 damage. I'll just hit Control 5 and put 5 damage on it. Well, if it was shooting back at night, it would still get its full value. So someone could mark it with that ignore damage marker so that we remember that it's got its full firepower. So those are the options that are available on that menu. So let's take a look at some of the other items that are available here. We'll get to the dice. This one's a key one, the tables. We'll demonstrate, we'll show you the tables that Brad Solberg came up with that show the various odds of probabilities that can be useful. So that's right there. This allows you to create notes that can be visible to an audience, to the other player, to just yourself if you want, or that can be delayed until a certain moment in the game. So you can create a bunch of notes that way. Comments on the game can be useful. We'll cover dice rolling in another section. All right. The picture one is quite useful if you want to document your game. Click on the photo. That will allow you to take a picture of the game in its current state, at its current size, and put it in there. Of course, the magnifying glass and the up and down allow you to magnify, zoom in or zoom out, or you can pick a precise match, even fitting the visible space on your screen. The flip raters button is useful when you want to change at the end of a turn when you're setting everything back to patrollers. I'll click it now. All of the patrollers are flipped back over. This, the world button allows you to get rid of all the pieces on the board. Clicking it again gets you back, but that allows you to see the text on the board and read it. The cleanup marker is interesting. It gets rid of the day-night preference item as well as the attack, the area, the order of battle markers, but it doesn't get rid of the special preference markers. So I'll go ahead and delete those now. And it doesn't get rid of the ignore damage markers, and it doesn't get rid of the repair markers. So that's fairly limited, but it can be of some use to clean up things at the end of a turn. All right, we're going to go into the file menu in the next help video. The help menu, on the other hand, is quite useful. There's a lot of information to help beginners, links into the Gamaholics website, information about the NT1 and Open Turn 2 variants, also the British removals, links to play-by-email tournaments and the organized events that occur in Victory in the Pacific. There's a lot of information here that can help you. The abouts can give you information that you'll need if you ever need to report a problem. That's all you need to know to successfully navigate Vassal. In the next module, we'll cover how to use files.